Mikula the Kind spoke of the beginning. The seduction and the betrayal.
Before entering this DLC around, well, 7 days ago, I found myself going through the internet and finding a lot of extremely mixed reactions towards this DLC. Something that felt strange considering that, well, we're talking about the one and only From Software. We're not basically talking about a new indie company. Critics from the lore aspect to the technical aspect, both praising it and at the same time also hating it. And taking into account the extreme anticipation that so many people had, it was very strange that something like this happens with one of their DLCs. And after being able to play through the entire thing, through the entire DLC, getting every item and finding every single thing that I could find, I must say, hey, I really enjoyed it. But enjoying something doesn't always mean that that something is perfect in every way and form. So the question still lingers, is all the criticism surrounding this DLC valid? At least for me personally, no, but at the same time, I'm able to understand the perspective of certain people that went out of their way to bash certain stuff into it. And as much as I would want to not fall into debate, I must admit that after playing, there's some valid criticism out there that needs to be understood. Not a lot, since the majority of things to say are good, but there's absolutely some stuff that needs to be addressed. And to be able to structure it and put it into words better, I'll try to put everything that I think about this DLC and I'll separate it in different sections. This one's being the good and the bad parts of the DLC, trying to tackle both into the lore and into the technical aspect of Shadow of the Erdtree. Starting for the map and, well, everything that encapsulates the location of where you are at, lore-based in the good side, we're finally able to explore the Realm of Shadows. For those that are not pretty aware of what this is, because, well, I don't think everyone knows about the lore, it's basically an alternate, death-filled version of the Lands Between. You know, that's why you see so many tombstones and coffins that delineate literally almost every place, and especially Graveside Plain. It's said that this place, the Realm of Shadows, finds itself existing under a veil, sitting near the center of the original Elden Ring map. And I must say, the map is absolutely beautiful. From the Cerulean Coast to the Abyss Forest, the Graveside Plain, the Charos Hidden Grave, and basically all the multiple places you can find, castles and dungeons, it's just absolutely pretty to look at. The map is amazingly done, at least for the eyes. Multiple places are done with the intention to make you feel in certain type of way or to basically get an emotion out of you. That could be uneasiness, surprise, or even amazeness. The Abyss Forest is one really good perfect example. Right after beating Jori, boss which, by the way, we're gonna talk about very deep in this same video, you're able to enter this place with an incredible presentation. Your horse is not able to get out due to fear, and you find yourself having to walk your way down a forest full of animals corrupted by madness. The entire place tones down into a really obscure setting that makes you feel pretty uneasy in every corner of it. And reaching Midran's Manse is the peak of it, since all this place surrounded by madness concludes with what I consider to be one of the best bosses that From Software has ever designed, but we'll go more into that later. The Shaman Village in Skyview, a beautiful garden where it's said that the Queen Erica found herself before catastrophe happened, or the Cerulean Coast, a place that highlights itself due to how amazing it is the moment you set foot into it, being a delight to the sight, are basically more examples of how well made the visuals itself are. And man, if I wanted, I could go more in deep in every single place that this DLC has brought. The Shadow Keep and the dread it makes you feel, the incredibly tough specimen storehouse, the ancient ruins of Rao which you find in your way to find and fight Romina, but it will basically take too long and it's not the plan. But now, if I wanted to go to the bad side, what is there to say? Well, I'm gonna put it on a really summarized way. There's where mainly the technical aspect enters, and to be honest, in my run at least, sometimes it felt empty. And yeah, I know, but don't get me wrong, I don't mean that you should find a party full of bosses in middle of the Abyss Forest, because that just wouldn't work. But sometimes I felt myself going around the Cerulean Coast, the Charos Hidden Grave, the Abyss Forest itself sometimes, just going in circles all around, finding everything that I could find, even having to go into the internet to check on a guide of the place because I just felt like I was absolutely missing stuff. And then at the moment I saw all the stuff that was in those sections and checking that I got every single one of the items and every single one of the things, I remember just saying, wow, is that it? Just going around doing circles around a place where there's really not that much of anything? Items, bosses, damn, dungeons? All for only one Erdtree fragment. Yeah, I mean, in the Cerulean Coast, there's one dragon boss fight, I'm gonna speak about it later too, by the way. Lots of grapes on the ground, and really, I don't remember any other reason to care about that place but how nice it looked. Even Elden, for as beautiful as it is and how good its architecture with all the bodies being its main foundation is, it just feels not as good as I would expect. Some places didn't see enough of this. The Graviside Plain, for example, is a place where everywhere you go felt like an adventure, and the exact same thing I felt with the Scadu Atlas. I also absolutely remember this not being a problem on the main game of Elden Ring, since in every corner that I could look, there was something. But the more I found myself excited to find new things, the more that, well, they just weren't there. The more I felt that sense of, man, this place is really wasted potential. And again, don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean that those places that I've said those things about were the absolute worst or something that should be eradicated. But I do feel like there was a lot of lost potential and stuff that could have made these places way more memorable. Just imagine fighting a legitimate boss that is not a dragon copy-paste in the middle of the blue flowers field of the Cerulean Coast on some type of ancient Sword Saint fashion, or the same going for the red field in Charos Hidden Grave. It could have been something that will stick in the mind of the players for a lot of time, but that didn't happen, and it just feels weird. It feels like those places were just used as filler when it would have been amazing to have something else to remember these places beyond how nice they look. The map is amazing for the story it tells, it works good for the lore, but when it comes to technical aspects, there's certain songs that just lack that feeling of memorable, when the frustrating part is that the potential for them to be memorable was just there. It was right there. It needed just something more, something added, a little bit more of work, maybe even one boss could have made the deal. It's not a mistake that happens that much since, as I said, there's many songs that are very enjoyable and feels like playing the main game all over again in a good way. But at the same time, sadly not everything is like that. But sadly, not everything can be perfect neither. Now, if we wanted to move away from the map and go more into a different aspect, this could easily be the story. And here, well, there's honestly not much technicality, so we're just gonna go straight for the lore, and despite me not being a lore master, which means that I could have missed something here and there, I must say that it achieves what it must achieve. To put a small summary of the lore, Miquella decides that the best way to bring compassion to the world, which is the thing that he was supposedly searching for, is if he becomes a god. And without caring how he gets it, he travels to the Land of Shadows seeking for the Promised Lord. Through a whole lot of manipulation, gaslighting, and different tactics, he manages to deceive multiple people like Mog and Radahn, while at the same time working with others like her twin sister Malenia to achieve that goal. It becomes clear that Miquella's actions, while extreme, weren't really born of pure evil, or at least that's what the game wants you to believe. He sought to free himself and his family from the curses that plagued them. However, his methods of achieving this goal, by basically forcefully reshaping the world, proved to be misguided and destructive, slowly but surely showing that destruction due to the extreme manipulation he was able to achieve on people like Leda, who tries to stop you right before Radahn when she notices that you don't see Miquella on the same light as her and their followers. It's basically a classical trope that honestly works and does its objective, since the entire point of this DLC is for you to find and stop Miquella, using Mesmer's kindling to burn the selling tree after baiting Romina, and then entering into Ender Elim to find him and put an end to its madness. If I wanted to put something into the bad section of this, well, it's hard. Since there's not really much that is bad about this story, it accomplishes things and brings more good lore and information to the table, and at the same time, that answers some questions that the initial game had. But I will say something, and that is, man, if we're going into DLCs, there could have been a lot of really good options too. With this I mean that they're really not out of ideas. There's still a lot to unveil. Many bosses that the moment you fought them on the main games were basically not even close to their prime, or there wasn't too much info about them. And it could have been amazing to be able to learn more about them, since this DLC doesn't cover absolutely all the stuff there is in the world of the Lands Between. And all of these things that I said are not really bad by themselves neither. It's not something unfixable, and really, I hope they bring a new DLC that brings out all the information that is lacking. Maybe going back into the past where we could find the actual prime versions of multiple bosses, maybe as optional bosses across the map, and at the same time, tell stories about warriors of the Lands Between of the past. I feel like it could be a really good idea and will make people that felt dissatisfied with the lore provided by this DLC pretty happy, and that's me included. And well, that's pretty much all I have to say about the story and the lore. Brings a lot of new things to the table, but due to the excessively huge world that you find yourself into, the information presented is just not enough to be able to answer everything, and it just leaves you hanging on several things. The best thing to do is hope for a DLC that is able to bring more into the table. It will not be the first time that From Software make multiple DLCs for a game, so I guess time will tell. The bad part will be mainly that, again, wasted potential. And since we're talking about bosses, Radahn and etc, let's go there for a second and tackle something that I consider to be a pillar not only of almost every single From Software game, but also of the Souls-like genre as a whole. That being the enemies and mainly the bosses of the game. Here I'm really gonna unveil myself a lot, both on good and the bad aspects, so let's begin with the good aspects of the bosses. Going into this, I'll unveil myself going for two bosses that I don't only consider to be the best of this DLC, but... and yeah, it may sound as I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. I consider them to be some of the best bosses that From Software has ever created on their entire history. These ones being Midra, the Lord of Frenzied Flame, and I guess you already know, Mesmer the Impaler. And I'm gonna be completely honest with this. For me, these bosses encapsulate every single thing that From Software has done perfectly through the years. They don't only work perfect from a lore perspective, giving new possibilities, theories, and introducing new characters that actually fit the story and give it new meanings, but on a technical aspect, they're the absolute peak of what I consider a perfect boss fight. And now you will think, what do I consider a perfect boss fight? I mean, I could go really deep, but if I had to summarize it, it would be a boss that you wouldn't mind fighting over and over again. You will still have fun with it and you will enjoy every single second of it. No matter how many times you die to it, you will continue enjoying it. A feeling that I really haven't felt that much because it's just really hard in general to make bosses like that in any type of game. Ishin the Sword Saint, Slave Knight Gale, or Artorias the Abyss Walkers are some prime examples of what I mean with this. These bosses don't feel overwhelming, impossible, or unfair, because you can see what's going on. You know that the moment you die, the moment you get hit, it's your fault. There's nothing to blame but you, the player. This combined to the atmosphere, the music, the overall feeling of the fight, and of course, the amazing design, makes a boss fight, in my opinion, perfect. Or at least almost perfect. And as I said before, that difficulty, or better said, challenging aspect is an absolute to be able to understand what I mean. And there's a vital rule that bosses need to follow for them to accomplish this challenging aspect. This one rule being watch, learn, adapt, and overcome. It's not hard for the sake of being unfair and impossible. It seems impossible, which is different because as soon as you watch how that enemy moves, you learn their patterns, you adapt to them, and you overcome them. You can beat them. That's why sometimes when you start a new game plus in any Souls game, you'll find out that when you fight the bosses that you struggle so much with again, you're very probably gonna be able to beat them on the first tries because you basically already fought them. You learn how they move, you know how they work, and that's what makes them good. That feeling of, I was able to adapt to them and know they're a walk in the park, the sensation of reward and joy that it brings you is what a boss design needs in order to be almost perfect, or at least good. When I fought against Mesmer, I didn't feel like the blame was on any other than me. Every death on the 5 hours that I was fighting him was on me. Because I didn't roll on the moment I had to, because my timing was off, because I wasn't fast enough. It all fell on me. On a technical aspect, the hitbox is done to perfection, and the attacks, as hard as they look at the start becoming more and more understandable as you keep on fighting. Even the second phase works on the exact same way. The serpents he throws at you feel impossible to calculate and go against, but as soon as you understand the timing and how they work, you are able to beat him. And despite not talking much about Midra, he goes in the exact same way as Mesmer in working in every single sense, being a boss fight that is gonna stick into my memory for a long time. In the lore sense, it's able to show you how strong and unworthy Vessel is, since if you check the Flame of Frenzy's description, it says the following. The Lord of Frenzied Flame shall take their torment, despair, their affliction, every sin, every curse, all melted away, yet Midra, like others before him, was too weak to become a lord. The presentation, the cinematic, the transformation, the soundtrack and the moveset both work perfectly in both the lore aspect and the technical aspect, making you feel that all the pain that you went through after going through the entirety of the Abyss Forest actually was for something. And despite me talking about them being some of the best of From Software, what is the good bosses doesn't really end there. Mother Mother of Fingers, who's the mother of the two fingers that you find at Round Table Hold and basically mother of all the two fingers, Bale the Dread, who literally said to have fought Placidusax and taken some of his heads, Relana, Twin Moon Knight and twin sister of Renala, the incredible three-phase fights against the Scattered Tree Avatar that honestly would have had a position along Midra and Mesmer since it basically became my third favorite boss fight of this DLC. And also what is basically Orphan of Chaos on a horse, the Podrosen Knight. Damn, even the golden hippopotamus that we find inside the Shadow Keep are all examples of good boss fights, each one of them with their own stuff that makes them unique and really enjoyable. Despite sometimes some of them feeling slightly unfair, not a single one of them really reaches a critical level where I feel that someone should call it a bad boss or like an unfair boss. Some of them are more challenging than others, but all of them are fair on their own league. But now, what is there if I wanted to talk about the bad side? When I checked the reviews that I said at the start of the video, I used to believe it was just people crying because, you know, game hard, and at the end of the day, why are you gonna cry because a game is challenging when you, well, play a game that is supposed to be challenging? Behind a lot of performance issues complaints, I saw a lot of people complaining that certain bosses didn't meet the expectatives, and again, my thoughts were the previous set until I actually reached them. And if I wanted to be completely honest from the bottom of my heart, the ones that were right to the ones that were wrong was, honestly, a ratio of 90 to 10. Because I must have heard complaints about at least every single boss of the game in every single occasion, and I'm gonna be completely honest, in the big majority I did not see it. Especially in a lot of them that had been complained a lot, like the Divine Beast or even Bale. did not see a problem on them. The problems with the giant enemies like those two and the camera, it's not something that I really felt unless it got patched before they said it. But it's honestly not something that I felt myself. I felt them pretty fair. And before starting on all of this, I'd like to clarify something. I'll talk about all this in the perspective of the recommended levels on a New Game Plus run. What I mean by this is that every single boss is being fought with the recommended level. I didn't try them nor over-leveled nor under-leveled, and at the same time on a New Game Plus run, which is how I normally affront every single DLC. But now, that doesn't mean that the other 10% was not right on certain things, and if everything about the bosses was good, and as I said, the bosses are some vital pillar on From Software games, I wouldn't be making this video. Here, I'm not gonna express myself that much because, you know, I talked about it earlier, so I'll just say that as bad as this stuff is, it's really not that unfixable, but still, it's worth mentioning. Gaius having a gigantic hitbox where if you find yourself in a New Game Plus run is able to kill you in one hit, and Jori being able to spam magic and summons from every single side to the point that it's just impossible to know where anything is being thrown at you, at the same time that the magic phases through enemies that block your path because, yeah, just like that gigantic summon he has, well, at the same time the camera gets blocked and unable to lock in because even if you can see Jori, you can see the boss, the camera can't lock through 20 tombstones that he has forward. It's just something that needs to be fixed because it doesn't depend on you, that's problems with the game itself. It feels like artificial difficulty and it feels unfair because it's not depending on you anymore. When something related to a boss doesn't depend on you, like we said before, the camera, the FPS, or literally having magic phasing through enemies to the point that it feels like you're dodging invisible bullets, the fight turns from challenging to boring because I don't know the others, but I personally don't enjoy losing a fight because of something that was RNG and not my fault. Luckily though, those are two things that I feel like if a fixed patch could come, we'll be able to fix those mistakes and make those boss fights at least a little bit more enjoyable. I don't feel like they need an extreme nerf patch, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed Gaius besides that, but I do feel like some tweaking is necessary. But now, if we go to something bad that I do feel is unchangeable and a really bad mistake, man, Miyazaki, I know you love dragons, bro, but come on. Copy-pasting the exact same dragon 4 times in different areas is not something you did even on the original Elden Ring. Was making a different design of a dragon so hard? Literally copy-pasting all the dragons from the base game into the DLC, with the exception of Bale, very good design by the way, and doing some CB paste is the best you could come with to actually give some dragon fights? We're talking about a DLC that was more than 2 years in the making. Here, I just genuinely need to complain because it's not even about difficulty, it's about laziness. At least instead of a ghost flame, give me a frost dragon in the Cerulean Coast. Why is it necessary to fight the same dragon over and over and over again? Even the Jagged Peak Drake, man, it's okay that you put 2 dragons fighting and make it look like some type of epic battle, but again, I fought that Drake literally 3 seconds ago below. Why the need of forcing me to fight the exact same thing again? And why do you have to copy-paste the dragon we find on Farum Azula right before the fight with Bale? And I know it's optional, but man, really? Even if they were optional, there wasn't a chance to just change them? Tweak him a little bit? A CB paste again is all there was to do? My main complaint about the bosses, despite the errors on Hitbox and the stuff with Jori, is literally the fact that some of the bosses feel as an extreme lazy attempt to put something into places where they had no idea what to put. The Cerulean Coast, as I said before, was the perfect scenario for an amazing boss fight that could have been stuck in the mind of the people only to find a ghost flame dragon, the exact same dragon you fought 3 times before again, and that's it. And oh no, wait, he has a new power-up. He can bring some normal skeleton enemies. Oh man, Miyazaki, you did it again, bro. Even on Jaro's hidden grave, man, that was my favorite place of the DLC. You have such a beautiful place right there, and you just put a furnace golem and a tibia mariner? That's all? In such a place, that's all you can think about, a damn tibia mariner. It just feels like at some point of making this DLC, they made the remembrance bosses and they just gave up on trying to do anything different or optional for a lot of amazing songs they had. The chance was right there, but for some reason they fumbled, and it just feels bad that being so excited for the bosses of this DLC, despite having some amazing ones, we also had just a big amount of copy and paste. It was a 2 years wait, man. It's just insane to me. But well, as I said before, I don't lose hope, and maybe they're saving the juice for a new DLC. Yeah, surely it should be something like that. Let's hope. Now, you may have noticed that I didn't mention a certain boss, and it's because I wanted to talk about him in a specific way. And yes, of course you know, I'm talking about Radahn, the promised consort, who has been a controversy surrounding this DLC. Actually, maybe even the main controversy. Now, I'll say what I think immediately, and to be honest, having watched the controversies and the opinions of a lot of people, I just gotta say that some of them are extremely exaggerated, like insanely exaggerated. But at the same time, I do understand where they come from, so I'll go into it. Radahn is, at least for me, a really good boss fight. When we go to the lore, we're basically fighting what well could have been Radahn on his prime, or, well, kinda? Since we're talking about the soul of Radahn on the body of Mog, but in paper, it could feel like a prime Radahn that at the same time uses the power of Mikla on the second phase. And it's honestly something that I really looked forward on this DLC. Being honest, I think I would have preferred something different, maybe a new boss? But the idea is not bad, works perfectly for the lore, and honestly the fight itself is pretty good too. The first phase of this boss fight is amazing. You're basically fighting one of the most powerful warriors on Earth, and it shows on its moveset. It feels like a true battle on a Colosseum, and every single move is understandable and fair. You're able to learn about them. And that's without counting the really cool cinematics and the feel of going up the stairs right before reaching the boss battle. It feels honestly amazing. But then the second phase. Here is where I'm able to divide myself a little bit. Because while the first phase is something that I consider amazing, the second phase, it feels strange. This is of course my personal opinion, but when people get mad at this phase of Radahn, it's not something that I can overlook because I kinda felt the same thing. Visually, this phase is insane. Radahn being guided by Mikla legitimately feels like some type of Dragon Ball Z fight, and it makes you feel like you're actually fighting with a god. And at the same time that I enjoyed this fight, I'm able to understand the frustrations of the people because I understand it reaching a point where the only thing you're able to see is just a party of lights, and the fight itself starts becoming more chaotic than it should be. In all the story of From Software, I've never seen a boss fight like this, and at the same time that I like the experiment and it's honestly a nice show, sometimes it feels like it's depending on RNG. Due to the extreme amount of flashing lights around, and adding an extreme amount of light rays falling from each basic attack he does, literally every time he attacks, reaches a point where it's so overstimulating that it just feels like it's a extreme brain rot. And even if I didn't see it as the biggest problem in the world, since I was using a strength build and poise and a lot of stuff to actually be able to stagger him and beat him, I can understand that for the average person it's just looking at that and wanting to quit. The reason of why I didn't put him between the perfect bosses nor the bad ones is because it's confusing. I didn't consider him unfair to the level of it being impossible. It's actually a good boss. But at the same time, I can understand the extreme frustrations because it's just so much brain rot with the lights that it feels strange. I don't know if they will never nerf him, although, yeah, very probably they will, and a lot of people will have the I beat Radahn before the nerf medal, but here, it's not something that I would give my opinion on, since after all, I'm not a game designer. And I guess I leave the work to the people of From Software. I don't know if they would nerf him or not, but hey, if one day I see that patch drop, man, I won't say that I don't understand it. And to put some kind of seal on this Radahn thing, I consider him a good boss. Even the second phase, with all the light show it is, it's pretty interesting and pretty entertaining too. I mean, it was an amazing light show, but if I had to say if I enjoyed it at the level of the Moon Presence of Bloodborne, at the level of Soul of Cinder, of Gwyn, of Ishin the Sword Saint, then even at the level of Radahn, man, it's not really close. Or at least I don't feel like it is. Is it a good boss fight? Yes, it is. It's actually a really amazing boss fight. Will I change the moveset? Not really, because I don't feel like it's necessary. Is he one of the best bosses of From Software, or even better said, one of the best final bosses on the entirety of From Software? I don't think so. I consider him a really good boss fight, but that second phase, I have actually something to say about it, and that something is sometimes less is more. And despite all the stuff that I said, as a final note, I don't feel like this DLC deserves the extreme criticism it got. Even if it seems like I went all out with the bad stuff, that's really everything there is. I don't consider that the game has more negatives than anything that I said on this video. And if you take that on count, taking on count all the base enemies, all the weapons that are amazing, all the items, and everything surrounding this DLC, is actually a huge ratio of positive things against negative things. It's a really good DLC. I do believe there's errors and mistakes that must be fixed. I do believe that going through the roots, there's certain stuff that could have been made a little bit better, maybe with a little bit more of work, especially taking on count the expectatives of certain people. Maybe this could be done in other DLC, which is something that I think about frequently since I finished this DLC. There has to be another one. Because if the plan was to only make this and nothing else and cut it right here, I genuinely feel like there's an extreme case of wasted potential that could be used for another or even 2 more DLCs to explain a lot of things that are unanswered, to fight new foes or even old rivals on their prime, or damn, just to see more of this game in general. I feel like there's still a lot of juice to squeeze out of this franchise, so man. From Software, if you're watching this, just go ahead and do it. A second DLC is needed, and I'm sure it will be much appreciated from every single fan out there. Just please make sure to check your hitboxes in your bosses, and for the love of God, no more magic nor summon spam for bosses. Alright? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and also follow me on Twitch, where I stream every single day. I know this is pretty long for a first video even, because yeah, this is one of my first videos that I made and I honestly expected it to be of 10 minutes, but the more I yapped, the more it continued going forward, so it reached this length. But well, sometimes it happens. I'm gonna be making more videos surrounding gaming and different aspects of it coming forward, so look forward to it. We're planning to go big with this one. Also, follow my other channels where I'm gonna be uploading some similar type of content, but at the same time with different variations. So, well, you will see. I'll see you all on the next video.